Welcome to the chapel of the Othona community in West Dorset, where I'm talking this afternoon with Simon Parke about his book, Gospel, Rumours of Love. Simon, you're a pretty prolific author, everything from script writing to detective fiction to mindfulness, all sorts of other things in between. When did you know that you had to write this?
I think probably when I felt I was ready to write it. I think I've always been fascinated by the interiority of Jesus, of actually trying to understand how he worked as a man as opposed to what are we meant to believe about him.
So this is a novel?
This is a novel. This is a novel about Jesus. And I wanted to get inside Jesus as opposed to just telling, here's 10 things to believe about him. What was he like as a man? And I think I needed to get to a particular age and experience of life to do that. And then I was ready.
Okay. The way you do it is that we hear three voices. The narrative is shared between Jesus, but known by what was his Aramaic name, Yeshua, Mary, his mother, and Miriam from Magdala, who history knows as Mary Magdalene. And she's playing a very prominent role in this book. Were you writing a historical wrong?
Probably. In one way, it's hard to imagine a more significant figure than Mary Magdalene in the story of Jesus. If only we were to say that she is the only person who was there at the death of Jesus, at the burial of Jesus, and at the remarkable scene at the resurrection of Jesus. She was the only person who was there at all these key scenes. So she must have been a hugely significant figure in this story, but obviously a significant figure whose significance has been largely removed. And she's widely known in the church as a prostitute, a reformed prostitute. And of course, she never was a prostitute, and there's no evidence that she ever was. But that's how the church remembers her. Yet this was the woman who was there at the burial, there at the crucifixion, there at the resurrection. So a hugely significant figure. So yeah, probably writing some historical wrongs.
How did the church get the idea she was a prostitute? Where did that mistake come from?
I think it was in the 4th century. It was first suggested by one of the early fathers. I think, yeah.
They may have mixed her up with somebody else.
They may have done. I think people need to do their own research there, but it was a late addition to the story. I think it was 3rd or 4th century. Yeah.
So, in your telling of the story, her relationship to Jesus is very close. Were they, weren't they lovers has been a question other people have raised in recent years.
Yeah.
I think you leave that just a little bit open.
Yes, and I think we must, because we don't know. The Gospel of Philip says they kissed, but that's the Gospel of Philip is probably not the most reliable Gospel, although it's an interesting one. But in a way, it doesn't really matter. I think for me, what it's about is she was a life-giving friendship for Jesus. And I don't think Jesus had that many life-giving friendships on earth. John the Apostle, probably one of them, the disciple who Jesus loved. But probably other relationships were fairly exhausting, I think, for Jesus. But I think Mary Magdalene and John are perhaps two figures who we could say these were life-giving relationships, because the evidence is sort of there.
And the suggestion is that she actually heard things from him that some other people never did.
Yeah. And so in her gospel, the Gospel of Mary, there's a very difficult final scene where Peter is very upset with Mary because he can't believe that Jesus would have said things to her that he didn't say to them, and particularly to him. So when Mary Magdalene talks about the nous, that is almost why Jesus came, is to give us this inner knowing, this inner knowledge, the nous. But he told it to her secretly. Peter finds this very, very hard to cope with and effectively calls her a liar, which of course upsets Mary. And it's a very powerful and upsetting scene, but in a way it's prophetic, because that is exactly what happened. She was pushed out of the story as Peter wished her to be, and Peter took over. And all that sense of inner knowing was often lost in the church's proclamation after that.
Let's hear part of the book, and this is told in Miriam's voice.
Right.
And it's she and Yeshua, Jesus, are in private discussion. And she's just been quoting a song which ends in the line, "One day we'll have hearts and not rules." And she's really trying to find out what it is that Jesus means by the kingdom. He speaks often of the kingdom. And what is the kingdom that you wish for, Master? People say different things. Many say it'll happen here in Judea. The kingdom isn't a place, Miriam. It's a way, a state. It's the presence of God in a soul, in a look, in an action. I wonder at this and seek it. And how may I know this presence? He hesitates. I see he holds back. Am I not worthy to know? I ask. This is my first thought. I've always felt unworthy, and I feel so now. Give a fool wisdom, and he turns it into lies. I've heard this. Perhaps he thinks me too much of a fool, or too much of a woman. But he shakes his head, as if to reassure. I haven't spoken of this, Miriam, for you don't throw pearls before swine. The pearls may get trampled on and lost. But I will speak of it now, for perhaps you are ready to hear. He pauses again, as if still making up his mind, but then he starts, speaking slowly. The energy of God is found not by seeing, Miriam, nor is it found by feeling. Do you understand? I believe you will understand. I believe you are ready to receive these things. The energy of God is neither in seeing nor feeling. I repeat his words, for I'm confused. Then where is it found? It's found by knowing, by the nous. I don't understand, but can't admit it. I feel frustration for where is this nous? I want a simpler path. But where is this knowing to be found, Yesh, if not by seeing or feeling? You have a quick mind and quick senses, Miriam, but these aren't your way into the kingdom. You think fast and feel quickly, but beyond seeing and feeling, there is a hidden door, a thin fissure in the rock of your being through which knowing is found. When nous is found, a more ancient light, which isn't seeing and neither is it feeling, it is knowing. Again, I don't understand. I think too fast, he's right, and my thoughts take me past this hidden door. They can't stop to enter. I watch this occur, though I long to understand a different land. And I wonder if I know this man at all, such distance between us. Yet sometimes, no distance at all, as now when he kisses my head and strokes my hair. You have angels in your hair, Miriam, beautiful angels. And one day you will share these things I've told you, for only you can. It'll be your treasure to share. But now, he stops for a moment, he almost chokes, tears arise. Now it is horror or it is joy. For what started in Galilee must finish in Jerusalem. I know this now. She must have had a remarkable experience if she was anything like the person that we meet in your novel.
Yeah. I think, I think she did. And I suppose in that passage, I want to get over the mystery, but also the honour that she felt, but also the terror of being given this mystery, which actually she was responsible for. And my guess is, I think she found it hard. I think she found it hard to use her voice in life. And now she knew she was going to have to. but maybe she also saw that there was going to be opposition to her voice. So a sense of huge honour, but also as Jesus anticipated the end in Jerusalem, I think she's probably anticipating, what am I going to do with this mystery?
Let's just talk about your sources for a moment, because obviously the canonical Gospels, the traditional Gospels in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. What were the others?
Sources for the book. Mary, the Gospels of Mary and the Gospel of Thomas, obviously, are very important. I mean, these two Gospels obviously late arrivals on the scene. So the Gospel of Mary was found in 1896 and the Gospel of Thomas in 1945. So they weren't considered for the Bible. But maybe if they'd been around then, they might have been. But they were
written a long time.
They were written a long time before that, of course, yeah. of course. But yeah, so those, I mean, it's the Gospels are my main source. I mean, I did some historical research, obviously, with people, about Palestine in the first century and nationalism and racism and society and that sort of thing. But it is really the story of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because other books can't take us any nearer to the interiority of Jesus. That's the thing. They can give us the setting, which I hope is there in the book. We understand what it felt like to live in first century Palestine. But in the end, to get to the interiority of Jesus, we have to try and find that knowing, really. Go for that.
Simon, you were an Anglican priest for 20 years.
Yeah.
So you've studied the Gospels, you've preached from them, you've had your own relationship to Jesus, in whatever sense. What was new? Were there impactful things that you discovered new in the process of writing this?
Yeah, I think two things. I think the rage, the anger of Jesus, the intensity of the conflict that he had to live with. I think that shocked me. And how this scrap of human flesh managed to sustain this insight and this wisdom and this energy towards people in the face of relentless, devastating criticism and attack. And I mean, it was his word against everyone else's. I mean, no one else in Israel was talking like he was talking. He didn't have a little support group. But the disciples certainly weren't a support group, but they were, I think, as stunned as everybody else. And so this lone figure, and I think he was a very lone figure in many ways, offering this new vision of a very different Israel. And somehow he had this resilience in the face of intense conflict, intense attack. Pharisees, Sadducees, the fear of Rome. I think his anger really was very striking. His rage at the way that the power was oppressing people. And he only gets angry with power. And what he does, he's angry with power because of power puts heavy burdens on people, or it ignores people, or it makes people nothing. And he attacks power. So he's a hugely angry figure. And I think it's that anger that really struck me. I think the other thing that really struck me was what happened when he died, and that moment when he's not there, but neither is the church. And that question of what now? We've lost this man, he's gone, but he hasn't left a manifesto. What happens now? And that, I think that is a very moving moment, and very important as we think about what the church has become.
You're talking about conflicts. Your Yeshua has a pretty problematic relationship with his family, his mother and his siblings. I'm interested where you got the idea that might have had its origins in his not knowing the details of his own birth, remaining ignorant of
yes.
what actually happened or what was said to have happened.
Yeah.
How did you get to that?
Yes. So in the book, Yeshua only slowly discovers the story of his birth. We can only guess what Jesus knew about his birth. And I find, when I see people one-to-one normally in my normal course of life, people are often obviously they often don't know a great deal about their past. And actually slowly as they uncover it, their life begins to make more sense. I think what struck me in the story is that there was an issue between Jesus and his mother, and indeed Jesus and his family, and that's obviously he left home when he was 30. I don't think they wanted him to leave home. There were issues with his brothers who were against him. He tended to lie. We have an example in John when he lied to them once about what they're going to do, and of course that shocking scene when he snubs his mother when she turns up with the family and says they've asked us to meet him, and he says, "Who is my mother and who is my brothers?" Which are quite unacceptable. No society would allow anyone to say those words. So we can be quite sure that it wasn't made up by anyone. So there is an issue here. And he turns it into a positive, because then he says, well, who is my mother, who is my father, brothers, these are my family. And he turns to the people in front of him and says, these are my family. So he's almost constructing a new family, which, many people on earth have to do. We have to construct new families. So the question is, why? Why is there this discomfort there? There obviously is some discomfort. And so I do explore a little bit about the shame. Maybe it's the shame in Mary about the past and all the accusations about, who is the father? Is Jesus a bastard? It was all a bit messy, a bit hidden away. People don't talk about it. And I think sometimes, I'm guessing there in the novel, and that's pure imagination. But I think there is a messy situation that's arisen from his birth, and maybe it is shame around. Was he, in one way, obviously they were very glad to have him, and that the initial birth stories are about happiness.
And that's in the book too.
That is in the book too. That is in the book too. Huge happiness, and Mary remembers that joy. But then was there also some societal shame? Was he a little bit of an embarrassment in a way because of his origins and and the narratives that went around about that? So I just touched on that. It's not a huge part, but it is there, that a question of shame in his mother, really, at what happened. And obviously if the shame in the mother, that's transferred a little bit onto the child, and then obviously he would have to be an achiever, really. And then if he breaks the pattern, goes off at the age of 30 when he's running the family business, that could be, unpleasant and messy and difficult. But it's just a thought. But I think there was some mess there, and it could have been around shame. Who knows?
Let's talk about somebody else. There are various people in the New Testament who are just walk-on parts. We barely know more about them than their names.
No.
One of those you've brought into much sharper focus, a woman called Joanna. What's she about? Well,
I did want to bring her into sharper focus because I wanted her. Obviously she was a woman of means, because as we know, her husband worked in Herod's palace, which would be a lovely story in itself. The relationship of the wife is working with Jesus, and the husband is in Herod's palace, which is an interesting story. So I suspect a woman of means, but I think there are other women of means around as well who were supporting Jesus. And we know nothing about Joanna apart from the fact that her husband worked at Herod's palace and that she was one of the household of Jesus. But how interesting, and it is known that the women moved around with Jesus' household, which of course was entirely unknown in those times. You could not have women moving around. Jesus moved around all the time, and the strong sense that the women were there all the time. This, of course, is written out of the Gospels, apart from, I think of one very brief mention. I think she gets a mention in Luke, I think. But I think that's her only mention. And so it was really to honour Joanna and to give her a role is to honour all of them, all of the women who were there, who were never mentioned. And obviously part of this group, community around Jesus. It was never 12 disciples. It was never just 12 disciples. It was a large community around them, of whom many were women. And I would imagine the women were crucial, absolutely crucial. And maybe, in a supportive role to Jesus as well, as emotionally supportive, probably more than disciples could be. So I wanted to honour Joanna as obviously a very important woman in Jesus' household who doesn't really get a mention, apart from once.
some of the scenes in the book derive directly from scenes that we've got in the Gospels. Some you've completely invented, and some really memorable ones too. Early on, there's one where Yeshua gives healing to Miriam, to Mary Magdalene. And I wondered, could you describe for us how that happens, how that healing comes about?
Yeah, I think
it's a very vivid picture.
It is. It's a scene about it's a healing of it's an inner healing. It's a scene of inner healing, of taking all her anxieties and her voicelessness and her fear, and he's gripping her. He's holding her in quite an aggressive way, and she's really physically feeling it. And he's almost exorcising anxiety from her body and the causes of it, which that feels truthful to me. But it's quite a visceral scene, but it's also it's an inner scene. It's her letting go of things. So it's quite a therapeutic scene, but it's not in a way that any therapist could work. It worked today because
I was wondering how much Simon Parke, the psychotherapist, comes into that. You can't
touch the client. People, no. But yeah, I wanted to put that scene in. Yeah.
You really bring alive that growing conflict between Yeshua's teaching, his vision of the kingdom, of a God-aware life, and on the other hand, the official religion in Palestine, the Pharisees in the towns and the villages, and the temple elites in Jerusalem. And it's as if they're on a collision course, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Yeshua has a choice. Is he going to steer away from the oncoming vehicle, or is he not?
Yeah, yes. I mean, he probably had that choice again and again and again. This little man, this little scrap of flesh, taking on the kingdom of Israel. He said he didn't want to change a jot or tittle from the law, but he was driving a coach and horses through it, because he was saying, actually, Israel is no longer Israel. The new Israel goes beyond our borders. It goes to Tyre, it goes to Sidon, it goes to Canaan. We are moving out, and he's being entirely revolutionary and impossible. The Pharisees and Sadducees could not accept this, and of course, primarily, he's assaulting the temple, which was at the heart of everything. A conflict that could only it's one person against 100 tanks. And every day he had to get up and decide, am I going to continue this? And obviously gradually things close in and close in and close in.
He's taking something that was about a very clearly defined area, a chosen people, a place, the temple in the middle, and extending the boundaries, taking away the boundaries in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah. I think he was taking away every boundary of the kingdom of God. So he was extending it physically, as you say. The lines of Israel were
foreigners, Gentiles.
Yeah. And of course, it was one of the side stories is that Nazareth, of course, which Jesus came from, was a thoroughly racist town, known to be racist. It was thought to be more like Jerusalem than Jerusalem itself. It didn't want the Phoenicians in there, and there were some, and it was all very unpleasant. So Jesus came from a very racist town, but he was actually saying, well, no, that's all over now, because we're going to extend the borders of Israel, and we're also going to take...
Not in the sense of Israel taking over the countries around it.
No, sorry.
We're not doing a Ukraine here.
No, we're not doing a Ukraine here. Sorry. It's dissolving Israel. That's what he's doing. Yes, he's not attacking Ukraine, he's dissolving Russia. And he's saying these lines don't mean anything anymore. But also extending the kingdom to people like children who didn't get a look in. Here is the kingdom of God. Extending the kingdom to the untouchables, the outcasts, the underclass of society, the unhealed. Of course, for Judaism, the unhealed will be there for a reason, because it was a judgment. He didn't accept that. So he went to the underclass, he went to the outcast, which caused huge offense. He went to children, he spoke with the thieves on the cross, convicted, today you will be with me in paradise. So he was extending the kingdom, not just geographically, but also in terms of people of who was there, who was part of this story.
And to women.
And to women, of course. And to women. He travelled around with women. Women were obviously very important, but we wouldn't know that necessarily from the Gospels. But yeah, so here is a huge extension of the kingdom, which would have been quite intolerable to the existing authorities. And
some of his own followers found that very uncomfortable too. And I think you make that very clear. The book brings that out beautifully and sensitively. And let's hear again, this time from the Garden of Gethsemane. So the time of Jesus' imminent arrest, Yeshua's arrest. And the character we know from the Bible as Judas is called Jude in the book. A scene that has echoed down history and often to the complete demonization of Jude. And we're in this part of the book is in Yeshua's own voice. In Gethsemane, and armed men arrive. Who do you seek? I ask. Yeshua the Nazarene. You could have come in the light, my friends. No, really. But you arrive in the dark with swords and clubs as if I'm some bandit. I was with you daily in the temple, and you never laid a finger on me. But here we are, and this is your hour with the authority of darkness. I understand. And maybe your shame prefers the shadows. They are silent for a moment, so I reassure them. I am he, the one you seek. I hold out my hands in welcome. They turn to Jude, who appears from the dark. He nods. You can trust Jude, I say. We knew each other once, a good knowing, but our paths parted, for which I am sad. I look at him. Perhaps he's sad too. So, Jude, I'm handed over by you. Not by me, teacher, not by me. Jude has hollow eyes like a caught fish, like a fish thrashing, like a fish dying. You hand yourself over. And so I do, and so I do. We must each choose for ourselves and not lay blame at another's feet. You handed yourself over in the temple this afternoon. I spoke the truth, Jude, which is perhaps the same. But we're better for light than the darkness. You must show respect for the law and the prophets. Don't think I come to destroy the law and the prophets. But you do destroy, teacher, you do. You dismantle the law and you dismantle us, each of us. What are we to do? You seem to think everything is acceptable apart from the temple. You let a woman wipe your feet with her hair using costly perfume. He refers to Mary, my friend in Bethany and the best of hosts. She used spikenard, Jude. Costly, I agree, but kind. Am I not worth kindness? It stank the place out. I can still smell it. You sound as bitter as the aroma, Jude. Spikenard does stink. It smells of goat and brings all conversation to a halt. It's the smell of death, teacher. And if it's death you want, well, I don't know what you want or want of us. Just what do you want? You say the kingdom of God is within, but who knows where? We can't find it. So you leave us as beggars by the side of the road without comfort. You leave us as beggars. Happy are the poor in spirit, Jude, but not the self-pitying. You cry victim and fight what is, when all the time you could fall into love. In this moment, I feel quite free. A decision is made and a venture ahead. But Jude rubs his eyes like a child upset. You weren't the answer, you see, not the answer, not the hope I thought, the hope we thought, all of us. And now he almost smiles, though the smile doesn't reach his eyes, which is how I remember dear Jude. Haunted eyes, with a smile that stopped at his cheeks. Well, why couldn't you just, I thought you could help, and I did my best, really I did, but, well, the temple, what you did there, that isn't going to work. We must make friends, not lose them, make them. He looks for help from the sullen faces around. Why are you so hostile, Yeshua? It's just needless. It doesn't get us anywhere. So you hand yourself over. No one else need do it. You don't even run away now. You sit here in the garden and wait for us. I feel no guilt. Why would I feel guilt? I have an overwhelming desire to kiss him, to let him know that all is well. Jude, my friend. I reach out to him. He steps towards me, cautious, holding back, but I don't. I kiss his cheeks, one and then the other, and feel his tears. He sobs on my shoulder. I hold him. I can't judge this man. No judgment is there. I feel such love for him. My fear is quite gone. We release ourselves, each from the other, and he turns and runs into the night. So, let us go, I say. Jude, wrestling, understandably, with a hope that was a misplaced hope.
Yeah. He's living in the old world. He's living in a world of the old religion, really, and all the expectations of the old religion. And here is something new and unsettling, and it's making him feel restless, and he can't access it. And so then the disappointment, and then to the revenge for his disappointment and the revenge for his own feelings of inadequacy transferred onto Jesus. But yeah, full of sympathy for him, because it's not his fault he's part of the old world and his old understanding, because that's what he was brought up with. And he's been unable to make that transition into this new way, which, my goodness me, many of us have down the years, to move from old ways of thinking into something new. And he couldn't do it. But of course, something inside him was gnawing away. And he said, I don't feel guilty. And of course, he felt hugely guilty. But such a sad story. But Jesus, that was, I think Gethsemane is such an important scene, because it's the last time Jesus has a choice. And he could still, as Judas said, you waited here. Jesus didn't need to wait there. He could have avoided it, but he chose to. And I think once that decision is made, obviously the rest is almost inevitable. So that scene in Gethsemane, the last time Jesus had a choice, and he lets Judas go.
So we come towards the end of the story. As a writer, how difficult was it to write the crucifixion from Jesus, Yeshua's own point of view?
Yeah, absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it at all. I knew I had to do it. I did some reading around people. There are actually people, obviously, who've experienced crucifixion and have written about it.
Right.
So I did do some reading about that, but in the end, that's only postponing the moment when you have to write the scene. I didn't want to make it too long, but I knew it had to be there. And obviously, So the whole physicality of it has to be there. We have to live it. We have to live it. It has to be there as well because of the words spoken from the cross, which, you know, if you just had the words from the cross spoken from the cross, you would probably have the gospel. So it's a very short gospel, but remarkable words drawn from the deep and from the pain. So we have the physicality of crucifixion and how it works. But I hope also we have the remarkable words that were drawn out of Jesus on the cross, which in themselves are a gospel.
And there are scenes of resurrection following the resurrection.
Yeah.
There's a return, particularly to the lakeside in Galilee, and you chose that actually occurs twice.
Yes.
In the novel.
Yes. Well, there is a resurrection because it is a recording of the Gospels. And of course, it is one of the things about the resurrection is I always loved the fact that it was Mary Magdalene who had that first encounter. Because I always think, again, you know, if you were inventing the story, you wouldn't have her making that discovery. So there feels something really truthful, that ring of truth. You know, in the Gospels, when you feel, oh, that has the ring of truth, I'm always overjoyed that has such a ring of truth because it's such an unlikely story. And it's begging to be not believed. But something about the fact that it's a woman who discovers Jesus is very powerful and has a ring of truth. But yes, so they go to Galilee, they meet to Galilee. I think, and I open with that scene in the book, because I think I want to start, this is where we got to, but how did we get there? And so we start with a sense of life, and we probably don't know exactly what's happening. I mean, if you know the story, you would recognize it, but maybe if you didn't know the story, you wouldn't. And we start with just a lovely conversation between him and the disciples, and he's joking with them. And then we go basically then into a long flashback as to how they got to that scene at Galilee when they're making breakfast on a fire. I think it's a lovely scene. I think it's a lovely scene in the Gospels, and I wanted to bring it to life again. And in a way, start with something positive, start with something strong and beautiful and lovely, and then take the story back and see how we got there, because there's going to be some unloveliness on the way.
Hmm. You talk about whether people know the story in advance or not.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what sort of people you'd most hope would get a copy of this in their hands.
Oh, right. Gosh, I don't...
I've actually been, let me say, I've been reading it to somebody who hardly knows the gospel stories at all.
Oh, right.
It's been really interesting as a way of introducing that story.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think as a writer, I can never say who I want to read it. I want everyone to read it, of course, but I have no idea who read it. I mean, I'm very glad that someone who read it recently emailed me and said they read it in one sitting and it read like a thriller. And they weren't a Christian. And so there was something there. I mean, they probably would have missed quite a lot of some of the references and stuff, but actually it was just a story that they were able to sit and read. And they didn't really know. I mean, obviously they knew some things had happened, but they could sit and read it like a thriller, and they sat it in one sitting. Others, I mean, I think they are the ones, the easy ones for me. I think the difficult people will be who come with a particular view or a particular standpoint on Jesus. And of course, we've all got a standpoint on Jesus. And maybe it's uncomfortable if this story doesn't fit in with their narrative. So I think people will come with very different sort of baggage. We all have baggage when we read a book, and particularly about if someone is a hero of ours. You know, if you take on Jesus, you are parking your tank on someone else's lawn, and it's a big deal. And I have no wish to upset anyone. I just want people to enjoy this figure. And hopefully, I think probably the ones who read it most easily are the ones who carry the least baggage. I think if we've got very fixed notions, I think, you know, there could be some struggle. Well, Simon, thank you very much. We've touched on all sorts of aspects of the book. We've had a couple of tastes of it, but there's much, much more. And I thoroughly recommend it, I have to say. Gospel, Rumours of Love
by Simon Parke, and available, of course, from all good bookstores.
Yeah. Well, it's been lovely being here at Othona. It's been lovely being here at Othona, reflecting on it with the community here, because obviously a book, really, for me, a book is only, what it really is a conversation.
It's been a great basis for a retreat,
and it's been lovely to be here at the community and to be able to reflect on it in the community, with a community, because that's when a book comes alive for me. Yeah. So thank you.
And thank you.